Hello everyone, my name is Burhanuddin and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture, we are going to learn about services in Android. So now let's just first talk about service, that what is a service actually. So we can imagine a service as an activity without a user interface. It can be started from another application or application component like an activity or a broadcast receiver. Then it just keep running in the background. When we start a service, it just keeps running in the background independently from the life cycle of a component or an activity that started it. Okay, so it has no relation with the life cycle of any component we start the service actually. So for example, we can start an activity, then start a service, and then we can do some work in the background like location update or playing some music. On while user is not interactively active with the application, we can run anything in the background. Now before Android Audio, we could just keep the service invisibly running in the background without user ever noticing it. But of course, when the several other trendy apps started doing the same thing, it drains a lot of battery and makes the phone slow, and in a long period of time it degrades the performance of the device. So since Android Audio or API level 26, we have some limitations on the usage of the service, that how we can implement our service. We have to notify the user that we have certain services running in the background. So in a nutshell, we cannot keep the service running in the background if the application is not in a background. That is, the service will be killed after a short period of time. But there are several other ways to avoid that, and one of them are job schedulers, and the other option is to make the service as a foreground service. Now what do I mean by the foreground service? Now foreground service is just a service as a normal service, but instead of running in the background, it runs in a foreground. That is, the user will be aware that certain service is running in the background. It will give you a notification on the notification bar which cannot be cleared. Now that notification will always be there until the service is running and the user are aware of it, that the application is using some resources. The example of it is a music player service. The player should keep playing the music until the app is in the background and the user can see it. Foreground services are very unlikely to kill by the system. Now, since the Android Audio or API level 26, we have to create channels in order to create a notification and show them to the user. In the case of services, we need to do the same thing. But as the service are the self-descriptive, we do not need to provide the description for that. And the other thing we need to keep in the mind is to give the importance value of a service to as low as possible. Okay, so now let's just create an Android app and do the same thing that we have done in the previous notification lecture, and let's just create a channel for the notification and then we will implement our service. So now let's just open the Android Studio. Let's create a new Android Studio project. Select the empty activity and click on next. Now I will name this application as service example. Now click on finish. And let's just wait until the Gradles are built successfully. Okay, so my Gradles are built successfully now. Now let's just create the application class as we have done in the previous lecture. Okay, so for creating the application. Now what is the reason for me to create the application class? Okay, so the application class is just like what its name implies. Okay, so it wraps around our whole application with all of the activities, services, and if we want to do the setup at the start of our application and not in a particular activity, that application class is the right way of doing it. Okay, so now let's just create the application class, and to do that I will just right click on this package name and then new Java class. I will name it as app, and now I need to override the application class, or extend I need to extend actually the application class, and for doing that I can type android dot app dot application with the capital A, or I can just simply say application, and it will automatically write the whole package name for me. Okay, so now let's just click on the okay, leave the other things as it is. So now my application class is created. Now as we all know, on the startup the method which gets called is onCreate. So I need to override the onCreate method here. So for doing that I will just simply say onCreate, and it will override the onCreate method for me. Okay, so now let's just create a channel for our notification. So for doing that I will say I will create a channel ID first, and that name will be of string type, and it will be of final. That is, it is not going to change ever in my application. Okay, so for creating that I will just say public static final string, and I will name it as channel ID, as it is as I want this thing to be a constant, and as you know, the constant must be in a capital letters. That's that we are following certain naming conventions. Okay, so we will write it in a capital letters. So I will turn on the caps lock, and I will say channel ID, and now I will give it a value of channel 1. Okay, now let's just put a semicolon at the end, and we are done for this. Okay, so after creating a channel we need to call a method which can create a notification channel for us. Okay, so instead of writing my whole code inside this onCreate method, what I will do that I will just call the method here inside the onCreate method, and I will declare and define the method after it. Okay, so I will just let's just give this method create notification, maybe, yeah, create notification channel. Okay, notification channel. So we will use this method in order to create the notification channel. Now let's just define this method. Okay, so make sure you are outside of this onCreate method. Now let's just create this method. I will put this method as private, as I don't want this method to be accessible outside of this class. So I'll say private void create notification channel, and then now first we need to check that the Android version of a device is greater than Android Oreo or not, because notification class channel class is not available in the API lower than 26, that is Android or the Android Oreo. Okay, so in order to do that I will say build, or I will say if build, not this one, build dot version dot SDK, and I will take the SDK int, and then I will say is greater than or equal to build dot version, I will use this version codes dot. Now this version codes contains all the codes of the Android versions. Okay, that is Oreo, Eclair, Gingerbread, or Nugget, or KitKat, Jelly Bean, etc. like that. Okay, so I will just click on this Oreo to check the version code of this Oreo. So okay, we have. So now it's fine. Now let's just implement what to do if this if condition is true. Now, if the build version is greater than Android Oreo, then what we need to do is we need to create an object of a notification channel, which will take three parameters, that are channel ID, which will be a constant, then a channel name, and then the importance of that channel. Okay. So now, in order to create a notification channel, we actually need to create an object of a notification channel class. So let's just do that. So I'll say notification channel. Let's just name it as channel, and then I'll just say create a new object, and for creating the new object I will use the new keyword, and then I will say new notification channel. And now I need to pass three parameters here. The first one is the constant, that is my string constant, that is my channel ID. So I will say channel ID here. Okay. So the next thing I need to pass is the channel name. So let's just name it as channel 1. This must be a proper name if you are implementing this application in a real world, because it will carry on some importance. Right now in our project we don't care about what is the channel name, so I am just naming it as random. Now I need to define the importance of this channel. So to do that I need to use the notification manager class. So I will say notification manager dot importance. Now as you can see, there are certain importance levels that we have studied about in the notification lecture. So in this lecture I am just going to use one of them, and as I told earlier that the importance for our channel, if we are going to use it for a service, we need to keep it as low. So I will just going to use importance low for my service. Okay. Now with this channel object, let's just close this. Okay. So now with this channel object we have different customization options, but as we are going to use it for a service, we do not need to use them. Okay. So now let's just create an object of a notification manager class, and let's just get the service done. Okay. So in order to do that, I will just write here notification manager creating the object, and I will use get system service method, get system service, and then I will say I will pass the context, that is the notification manager dot this dot class. I will need to pass the notification manager class. So as I have passed it here, it says an error, the call requires the API level 26, 23 is the minimum, and we have current minimum as API level 20, API level 16. So let's just go back to our Gradle file, and let's just change this 16 to 23. Okay, now let's just sync our project, and now the error is gone. Okay. So now let's just use this manager object in order to create the notifications. I'll say manager dot create notification dot create notification channel, and then I will just simply pass the channel here, that is the channel object here. Okay, so we actually need to put this inside this if tag. It is getting out of the scope. So now as you can see, okay, so now we just need to register our application inside the manifest file. So for that, just triple click on this manifest folder and it will open the manifest file for you. So now let's just register our our application inside this manifest file. So I can just simply say it here as Android name, this one, and.app. Now the application is registered inside the manifest file. Okay, so now let's just create the XML layout for our application. Now what I need actually inside this application is I want to create a edit text here for getting the title of the service name, and as our service doesn't require any description, so we will not use the edit text for that. And then I just want to create two buttons for my service, that is one for starting the service and the another one will be for stopping the service. Now I will assign the on click method also with these buttons, that is one for the start service and one for the stop service respectively. Now let's just do that. Okay, so let's just hide this so that you can see it properly. So now first thing we want to do, let's just resize this a little bit. Okay, this is okay. Now let's just change this constraint layout to linear layout. Okay, now let's just remove this. Now first thing we need to do is change the orientation of the linear layout, because by default we know that the orientation of a linear layout is horizontal. So first let's just make it vertical, and for that I will type orientation to be vertical. Now let's just change the background as well. I will say background to color primary. Okay, now we need one edit text and two buttons. Okay, so I will say edit text. I'll give the width to match parent and height of 40 dp. Okay, now let's just give it a hint value. So I will say, now first let's just change the gravity of this linear layout to center, so that everything is in the center, not layout gravity, gravity. Okay, so as you can see, now my edit text is at the center of this linear layout. Now let's just put an hint of enter a title for the service. Okay, now let's just change this hint color to white so it is visible. So I'll say hint color, text color hint, and then I will say FFF. As you can see, now it is visible. So now let's just change the size of the text of the edit text and also the text color, because by default it will be black. Okay, so I will say text size and I want it to be 16 dp. Okay, and also the text color, so I will say text color and I want it to be white as well. Okay, so now what I want is just give this an ID. So I will say ID and I will name it as the EDT title. Always remember the ID should always be relevant. You just cannot assign a random name to an attribute or a UI component as an ID, because they carry their own importance. Okay, so now let's just put another two buttons below this edit text. So I will simply say button. I will put the layout width as match parent and height to be 40 dp, or let's just make it 180 dp. No, that's too big. 60 dp will be perfect. Okay, now I want the background to be white and the text will be start service, and I want the color to be color primary dark. Okay, now let's just give this an on click method. We do not need to assign an ID to this button because we are implementing the on click method on it. So I'll say on click, I will say it will call start service method. Okay, now I will just close this. Let me just copy this thing and I'll duplicate this, and this one will be for stop service. I'll change it here also. As you can see now, it is giving me an error that public void stop service method is not found. It is because we have still not implemented this method in our Java class. Once we implement our method in our Java class, this method will be gone. So first let's just put some margin between these two buttons. So I will do this, let's just do it in the stop service button. So I will say margin top to be 20 dp. Okay, that's far enough. So now let's just run our application. It will not run yet because we have not implemented these two buttons. So let's just implement these two buttons inside our main activity first. So I will say public void, then I will say start service, and then just do not forget to pass the view object inside it. So I'll say view and I will name it as v. Okay, so I need to do the same thing for the stop service method. So I'll say public void stop service, and then I'll just pass the view object here. Now let's just run our application and see whether it is working or not. So as you can see, our application is running completely up and fine. Okay, so now let's just create another Java class for our service. So I will name it as example service. So let's just create that class. I will say example service. Now this class will extend this class will extend a service class. So for that I will just simply say here service, and now as you can see it is automatically but actually it is extended from a wrong class. I want to extend it from android.app.service class. Okay, so now that's fine. So I just click on the OK, and now as you can see it is giving me an error because we need to implement certain methods here. So now we need to override one method here, that is onBind method. We actually only need onBind method for the bound services. Now what are bound services? So bound services are actually services where other components can communicate back and forth by binding to it. Okay, but our service will not will only start the service and not actually communicate with other service. So we do not need to implement any logic inside this onBind method, but as we need to implement that method, we will keep that thing empty. Okay, So I will just simply say on bind, and it will implement this method. So I'll keep this method as empty because I don't want to communicate with other services. Okay. Now the method we actually need is to start service, and to start a service we actually need on start command method, which will be called after we start our service. So let's just actually create that method. So I will create it right here. So I will say on start command. Okay, and as you can see, the method is implemented for me. Now two more methods that we need to override are on create method and on destroy method. The on create method will be called first time when we create our service, and on start command method will be called every time we start our service. We can actually do this in multiple times and pass the intent object to it, and when we pass a new intent object, we can pass a new data or new information along with that intent object. But on create method will be one time in the life cycle of our Android application, so of our and of course of our service. Then we when we close our service on destroy method will be called. Okay. Then if we start a new service again, on create method will be called. But in this example, we will keep on create method and on destroy method as empty, and we only want the on start command method. But first, let's just go to our main activity from where we send some data to our service, and we will use on start method. So let's just go back to the main activity. Now let's just first instantiate the edit text that we have created in our layout file. So for doing that, I will just simply say edit text, and I will name it as edt title. You can look at the naming convention that I am using, that I am keeping the name of my ID that I have assigned it to the Android component in the XML file and in the Java file is the same, so that there are no confusion between them that which one is which. Okay, so I can just simply say edt title, and then I can just simply say edt title dot I'll say equals to find view by id r.id dot edt title. Okay, so now we have already implemented two methods here that are of our start service and stop service. So now let's just implement our logic inside these methods in order to start a service and stop a service. So for doing that, first, for starting a service, I need the title, and that title will be stored in the edt title. So I just need to fetch the data from that. So let me create an input object of string type. So I will say string input, and then I will say edt title dot get text. Now I need to convert it to string, so I'll say to string. And then in order to start a service, I need to create an intent object. Okay, so I'll say intent, and then I'll say service intent. Now in order to creating the object of the intent, I will say new intent. Now I need to pass the context here, so I will say this, and then the second argument I need to pass my example service class. So I will say example service dot class. Okay, this is I am specifying that whenever this button is getting clicked, pass the data from this activity to the example service class. Okay, so let's just put some extras here. So I'll say service intent. I will use this service intent. I will use this intent object, that is service intent, and then I will say put extra, I will need to put a string extra, so I will say put an extra and I will name it as input extra, because I want to pass this intent that because I want to pass the input value that I am getting from the scene from the user to this example service class. So I'll say input extra, and then as a second argument I will pass this input object, so I will say input. Okay, and let's just put the semicolon at the end. So now let's just start this service. And to start, as we know, to start an activity we call the start activity method, but as we want to start a service, we can actually call the start service method. So I'll say start service. Okay, there is one more method available here, that is start foreground service, as you can see, and we are going to talk about it in a bit. So let's just ignore this method and let's just use this start service method, as we are going to use actually this start foreground service method later on in this application. Okay, so let's just give it a start service, and we need to pass the intent object here, that is the service intent. Okay, now let's just put the semicolon at the end and we are done for this method. So now let's just apply our logic inside the stop service method. So this method will actually stop the service, so we don't need to do much here. So I will just simply create an intent object. It will say service intent as well. Now let's just say new intent. Now I need to pass the context and the example service class here, dot class. Okay, now let's just put the semicolon at the end, and then I just need to call the stop service method. Okay, so I can just simply say stop service, and I will say pass the intent object here, and this in this way I can stop a service. Okay, so we are done for this two methods. Now what we need to do is go to the service example service Java file, and inside that on start command method we will implement our logic there. Okay, so let's just go to this example service class. Now we do not need this return, so I'll just simply delete this, and now I can implement my logic here. So what I need to do is first fetch the data that I am getting passed with the help of intent object, that will be stored inside this intent object of mine. So inside this intent object of mine, I have the title string that the user have entered. So let's just fetch that title data from this intent object first. So I'll say string string, and I will name it as input. Now I want to get the data, or I want to fetch the data from that intent object. So I will say intent dot get string extra. Now remember we gave the data a name, that is the input extra. Now we need to pass the same name here in order to fetch the data. So I will say input extra. Okay, now let's just put the semicolon here. So now let's just create the object of a notification class. So let's just, in order to create a notification actually, so I'll say notification. I will name the object as notification as well. So now I will say equals to new, then notification compact. I will use the notification compact dot builder class in order to create the notification. Now this will take two parameters, so I will say this as a context, and then I will say channel ID. Okay. We do not need this parenthesis here. Okay, so now the error is gone. So now I want to implement more methods here. So instead of semicolon, I am just putting a dot. So as we know, to create a notification, we need to put a title, description, and icon. But in the service, we do not need to put a description. So instead of description, we need let's just get them one by one. So first, I want to put a title here. So I'll say set content title. So I'll say set content title, and then I'll say example service. Okay, now let's just put a dot again here. Now I need to put a text here, so I'll say set content text, this one, and I will actually put this title that user have entered inside this set content text. So I will say input. Okay, now we need to put an icon here, so I'll say set small icon, but we actually don't have any icon inside our project, so let's just get one for us. So inside this drawable, I just right click to this, and then I'll say vector assets. Let's just put this one. This one looks fine, so I'll just click on next and click on finish. So in order to access that, I will just say r.drawable dot IC Android black, and now as you can see right here that our icon is imported. So now let's just put the semicolon at the end. Okay, so it is. So we need to actually migrate my application from notification to notification compact because of the Android X. So let's just change it to this. Okay, so now that's fine. Error is gone. So now we want that when the user clicks on our service in the notification area, it should open up the app for us. Okay, so for that we need to create an intent and the object of a pending intent. So what is the pending intent? So pending intent is a type of an intent which does some activity on the as we are doing it. Okay, so that's the pending intent. I have explained the pending intent inside the notification lecture, so you can refer to that lecture if you want to learn more about pending intent. So let's just do that. So before getting this string, actually we need to do that. So I will say intent. I'll create the object of the intent, so I'll name it as notification intent, and then I will say new intent. I'll say this, and from this I want to go to the main activity dot class. I'll say main activity dot class. Okay, now I'll put the semicolon at the end. Now I need to create the object of the pending intent. So I will do it here. So I'll say pending intent. I'll create the object of the pending intent. So I will say pending intent equals to pending intent, and then as a context. Now before passing a parameter here, I need one more. I need to extend it from one more method from this pending intent class, and it is get activity. So I will simply say dot get activity. Now I can pass the parameters here. Okay, so let's just put the semicolon here first, and now I can say this the context, and then the 0 as a request code, then the object of the notification intent. So let me just put this in a separate line so that you can see it properly. Okay, now I need to pass one more thing here, so that will be the flag. So I'll set the flag value as a 0. Okay, so now now we need to pass this pending intent object inside this notification class also. So instead of this semicolon at the end, I will say dot set content type, set content intent, and then I will pass the object of this pending intent. Okay, so I need to pass one more method, that is actually for building this notification. I need to pass dot build method. Okay, so now we can remove this notification compact because we are using the dot build method. Okay, so I'll just remove it from here as well. Okay, so as you can see, it is now working completely fine. Okay, so we actually need notification compact here. Okay, so now as you can see, there is still one error here after this bracket, and if I hover this error, it says me that missing a return statement. So this notification class actually returns a notification object which will reside inside this notification class, and when we run to display a notification, we normally call through a notify method on notification manager, but we do not need to do it here as the service it doesn't as the service class does it itself. So instead we will say, after this build method, we will just say start foreground. Okay, so I'll just say here that start foreground, and I need to pass two parameters here. The first one will be the constant that will define that what happens when the system kills our service. Okay, so I'll just give this constant 1, and then I will say I'll pass the notification object here, so I'll say notification, and then as a return statement I need to return the type of the service, that is it will be sticky or not. So I'll explain you in a bit. So I'll just say start not sticky for our method. So now as you can see, here are certain methods, but we will only talk about the top 3 methods that we are getting shown here, that are start not sticky, start deliver intent, and start sticky. So what is the difference between these 3? Okay, so start not sticky means our service will not start again. Now the start sticky right here, this means that our service will restart as soon as possible, but the intent we pass to it will be null. And start redeliver intent means that it will restart it again, and it will pass the previous intent object that we have passed earlier here to this service. Now this plays bigger role for the background service, because the foreground service is very unlikely to getting killed by the system. So we will choose the start not sticky because we don't care about our service. So we can also create a notification in on create. So it will be only created one time. In our case we will create it when we create on start command method. Okay, so I'll just simply say return start not sticky right here and put the semicolon in the end. Now before starting a service, we need to first register our service in our manifest file. So let's just do that. So let's just open our manifest file. It is somewhere here, right here. And now I want to register my service here. So inside this application tag, I'll just simply say service. Inside the tag, I'll say service, and then I will just select my service and done. Okay, so now let's just run our application. and see whether it is working or not. So my application is up and running now. Now before starting a service, I want to show you one thing, that if we will start our service in a background, it will get killed in around the 1 minute mark. So before doing that, I want to show you that how you can enable the developers option in your Android emulator. So for that, just go to the settings right here, and then just go to the system, and inside this, okay, not this, inside this about emulator device, you can see this build number. So if you click several times on this build number, you will become a developer. I already I turned on the developer feature options, so it says me that no need, you are already a developer. Okay, so what I want to do is just go to the developer options. Now these are very handy features when you are developing the Android apps. As for our service, what we need to do is check whether the service is getting killed by the system or not. So what can I do is actually go to this running services, and then here, as you can see, here are the list of the services that are currently running inside my Android emulator. So let's just go back to our Android app, and now let's just start the service. As you can see, my service is getting started. Okay, so as you can see, here is my service running, and now you will see that after the 1 minute mark, the service will be stopped. Okay, so as you can see, our service is actually running in the foreground. So it is not stopped. That is because we have forgotten to do one thing. We have actually not commented out the start foreground service. So for that, let's just go back to this example service, and let's just comment this thing out. Okay, so now let's just run our application again. Okay, so now let's just start the service. As you can see, my service is now not running in the foreground, and actually it will be running in the background. As you can see, my service is running here. So now let's just wait and see whether it gets killed by the system or not. So now, as you can see, as soon as reaches the 1 minute mark, my service is getting killed automatically by the system. So that's how the background services work after the audio inside the in Android. In the first case, we were running the service in the foreground, that we were able to see the notification here, and it doesn't get killed by the system. But in the second case, it gets killed by the system because it was running in the background. So now let's just move back to this example service class, because I want to show you something more. So we can actually stop the service by itself using the stop cells method. You can see right here. We can also use this method in order to call the service, stop the service. Now you need to understand one thing, that it is very important to know that by default, normal service doesn't run in the background. It runs in the main UI thread, which means that if we do something, some heavy operation on the main UI thread here, without starting a new thread, our application will not respond to anything we do with it. So there is also a subclass of a service available, which is also known as intent service, which will start the service in the main UI thread. And one more thing, let's just go back to the main activity again, and this time the start service method. Now the start service method works because we have called it while our application was still open. If we want to start a service while the application is in the background, we should call the start foreground service method. Remember that I told you that we will talk about the start foreground service method earlier. So now let's talk about that start foreground service method. So if we want to open or start our service when our application is in a background, we can actually use that start foreground service method. And this method tells that you want to promote your service as a foreground service as quickly as possible. And after calling that method, now you need to remember this. Okay, so you need to remember this every time you start the foreground service method, that after calling the start foreground service method, you will get a 5-second window. In this 5-second window, you need to call the start foreground service in your you need to actually call the start foreground service class. If you don't do this, then in the 5 seconds, then the system will automatically kill your service. Okay, and it will do it on the immediate basis. Okay, so let's just go back to the main activity, and instead of start service, I'll actually use the start foreground service. Okay, so we can use this method in order to start our service in a background. Now if we try to call start service from the background, it will throw an illegal exception and our application will get crashed. Now there are some situations that our app is on the temporary whitelist and we can call the start service without a crash. But usually if we want to start a service from a background, we use the start foreground service method instead. Now it is currently giving me an error actually, and it says that call require API level 26 and the current minimum is 23. But instead of changing our minimum API level in the build.gradle file, what can I actually do is I can actually use this method. I can actually call context compact dot start foreground service. Now as you can see, the error is gone. Now if I click on the start foreground, now if I am using this, by the way I am using this context compact, so I need to pass the context here. Okay, so now the error is gone. Actually the C will be a capital. Okay, oh, I need to pass the context, so I can just simply say this. Okay, so now I want to show you one more thing, that if I click on the start foreground service method, as you can see, it is already doing that compatibility check that we have done earlier. Okay, that it is checking the build version is greater than 26 or not. Okay, so if the build version is greater than 26, it will call the context.start foreground service method, and if the if the build version is lower than 26, then it will just simply call the start service method. So it is already doing the same thing for us. Okay, so now I just want to show you that 5-second window that we get. What we'll do, that I will just go to the example service class, and I will just keep this thing commented out. Okay, so now let's just run our application again and see whether the service is getting killed by the system automatically or not after the 5 seconds. So let's just open the app and start the service, and as you can see, my service is running, and as you can see, after the 5-second mark, my service was getting killed by the system automatically. So let's just do that one more time to give you a better understanding of that. So if I start the service, and as you can see, it is currently running, and after the 5-second mark, it gets killed by the system automatically. So now let me just give you an overview that how the service works. So let me just uncomment this. Let's just run the application again. Oops. Okay, so let's just enter a title here. I will say service, and then I will click on the start service, and as you can see, my service is running right here. Okay, so as you can see, here is our small icon. Here is our title that I have given, example service, and here is a text that we have entered as a service. Okay, so if I close this application right here, as you can see, my application is closed, but still my service is running, and it will keep on running until I don't open this application again, and I'll click on the stop service method, and as I click on the stop service method, my service gets stopped. Okay, so I want to show you one more thing, that if I start the service again. Now let me just close this application, destroy it, and as you can see, I completely destroyed my application from the memory, but still it is running. And now remember, we have made this service clickable. So if I click on this service, as you can see, it is opening the application for me. Okay, so now as you can see, my service is running still. Now if I want to stop this service, I can just simply click on this stop service button, and now as you can see, my service is not running. Okay, so this is how you can create a service in services in Android, and that was how you can create a foreground service, background service, and that I think that was it for this lecture, and see you in the next video.